Yesterday, I went to the courthouse in Benghazi to see where the February 17th revolution began. 9 months later, Gaddafi is dead and an Al-Qaeda flag flies over the courthouse. I guess this means the revolution is over and the battle for Libya begins. This is Raymond Pegnico, reporting for CNN.
Being inspired by the low-budget movie. Come on, give me a break. It's 9/11. I noticed it was 9/11. Why didn't the Obama administration notice it was 9/11? And let's go back farther to the naivete of the typical Democratic administration, which is this idea that Egypt and Libya, the uprisings that looked, you know, with men running around shooting in the air, that was somehow going to lead to a democracy. A revolution that looks like the LA riots is not going to lead to anything good. I knew that last March. I was on your show saying that last March. Why didn't the administration know that this was inevitable? It is exactly like Jimmy Carter. Forget Neville Chamberlain. All we need with this guy now is he's wrecked the economy. He's utterly naive on foreign policy. We just need a killer rabbit chasing him.
But look at the flag. They ripped down our flag, Ann. They hold up a flag. They say, no God, but Brigitte, Michael wants me to give them some time.
No,
I want to respond.
No, we're not going to waste any more time because we're casting our pearls at the feet of swine at this time. They do not deserve our money. They do not deserve our support. And it's about time our president stands up as a man and stand up to a bunch of thugs destroying our reputation and attacking us like this. This is the home of the brave, not the lands of cowards. And we need a president who's a brave man to stand up against our enemy and start squandering our money on people who don't deserve it. We gave them enough time. Now it's time to act. And I urge everyone watching this interview to go to actforamerica.org and get involved in taking back our nation and putting America's head back up high and speaking as the land of the brave. It's about time to act.
And Brigitte, maybe the president should have showed up at a few of his daily intelligence briefings, which liberals made such a big deal about when George Bush was in the White House, which George Bush actually attended on a daily basis. And maybe he can identify them as radical Islamists, which they are. That seems to be missing in Fort Hood. That's the common theme. This president will not say the word radical terrorist. He will not say war on terror. It seems to me that is pathetically weak.
Sean, it is pathetically weak. And Sean, we found out the Egyptian intelligence knew September 4th that there will be attacks against the United States Embassy. If the Egyptian intelligence knew that, how come our president did not know it? Did he miss the briefing when they informed him about the embassies going to be attacked? This is not news. This is not new. We knew the embassies are going to be attacked. How come our government is putting our people's lives in danger overseas in a country where we know they are not protecting our people? This is why it's the job of the president and the job of the people to hold him accountable, to say that we are facing an enemy that is radical Islamist, and the flag that they raised up is not an Al-Qaeda flag. It's an Islamic flag that was invented in the 800s. It's the most authentic symbol of Islam that only Al-Qaeda and the radical Islamists are now bringing back and reviving to attack the West and the United States.
All right, I appreciate you both being with us. I wish I was wrong when the Arab Spring was happening. We predicted the Muslim Brotherhood would be in charge, and we predicted a lot of this would happen. Most of the mainstream media, the president, they all ignored what was obvious to those of us that had.
Can everybody please give Adrian a great round of applause for the wonderful introduction. I also want to say it's good to see your once and next Congresswoman, Dina Titus. And it is so good to see all of you. I love you back. I do. I want to begin tonight. Thank you. So, I want to begin tonight by just saying a few words about a tough day that we've had today. You know, we lost 4 Americans last night who were killed when they were attacked at a diplomatic post in Libya. And they were serving overseas on our behalf. Despite the dangers, despite the risks, to help one of the world's youngest democracies get on its feet. They were working to advance the interests and the values that we hold dear as Americans. And as Americans, we stand united, all of us, in gratitude for their service, and we are mindful of their sacrifice. And we want to send out heartfelt prayers to their loved ones who grieve today. It's a reminder that the freedoms we enjoy, sometimes in the freedoms we take for granted, they're only sustained because there are people like those who were killed, who are willing to stand up for those freedoms, who are willing to fight for those freedoms, in some cases to lay down their lives for those freedoms. So tonight, let's think of them and thank them. As for the ones we lost last night, I want to assure you we will bring their killers to justice. And we want to send a message all around the world. Anybody who would do us harm, no act of terror will dim the light of the values that we proudly shine on the rest of the world, and no act of violence will shake the resolve of the United States of America. We will not be deterred. We will keep going. We will keep going because the world needs us. We are the one indispensable power in the world. And if we are going to see peace and security for our children and our grandchildren, then that means that this generation of Americans has to lead. We're going to have to keep doing the work, no matter how hard it seems sometimes. And that's what I want to talk to you about here today. We've got work to do overseas. We've also got to do some work here at home. And we've got to do some work right here in the great state of Nevada. Now, because Nevada is a battleground state, you are aware that we've got an election going on.
Now, they said that these comments would come early in the speech, so I assume that's all he's going to say on the situation. He said it was a tough day today, and yet only 24 hours after this happened did he finally say we will bring those people to justice. At no time did the president mention or discuss the issue of Islamic terrorists. Perhaps he will refer to this as workplace violence like he did. We've been sounding the alarm about just how dangerous the Muslim Brotherhood is, and in particular, what would happen if that group took over in Egypt. And the Obama administration has done nothing but ignore what we have been telling them. And while this White House glosses over what the group really stands for, we're here tonight. Well, we want to spell this out for you. The Muslim Brotherhood is one of Egypt's largest Islamic organizations. Its main goal is to create a state ruled by Sharia law. In addition, its slogan is, quote, Islam is the solution. And up until the 70s, the group had been involved in assassination attempts as well as planned bombings. And while the United States no longer considers the Muslim Brotherhood to be a foreign terrorist organization, Osama bin Laden's top deputy, Ayman al-Zawahiri, was a member of the group. Even the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he joined the Muslim Brotherhood in Kuwait at 16, as did bin Laden. And how does the administration treat this organization? Well, back in April, a delegation of Muslim Brotherhood officials, they met with White House staffers. How appropriate. I think it's time for the president to get a backbone, denounce this group, and also, what are they going to do at this point? Joining me with reaction is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Culture of Corruption, Michelle Malkin. Michelle, when you looked at the middle of the height of this Arab Spring, and Tahrir Square, where American reporters were getting punched in the face. We remember the Lara Logan raped in Tahrir Square, beaten to within an inch of her life, and she told her story. There were some in the media, in the punditry class, and the president and the vice president telling the world democracy as the president helped push Mubarak out. Now we're giving the Muslim Brotherhood $1.5 billion and meetings in the White House. And the president fails to acknowledge that what happened yesterday was the result of Islamic radical extremists. I want to get your reaction.
Right. That's right. He won't say those words. He won't acknowledge the coddling that this administration is responsible for and the subsidizing with taxpayer dollars of the kind of Islamic violent agitation that we are now seeing. Keep in mind that the political arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, the so-called Freedom and Justice Party, is the one that's instigating now all of these so-called peaceful protests that are going to erupt from now through Friday, through next Friday, and every Friday, because every Friday in the jihad world, it's Riot Friday against anything anti-Western. Pretext is the word of the day, the word of the century here, because any perceived insult that can be exploited to castigate, to demonize, and to provoke violence against the West is the agenda of this group, Muslim Brotherhood, and all of its affiliates. Jihad is our way as part of their official slogan. Death for the sake of Allah is what they strive for. And the network of Wahhabi-subsidized groups that have been offshoots of Muslim Brotherhood across this country, it's very important that people understand that. What was 9/11 about? It's not about will we ever forget, never forget. It's will we ever learn. It's the Muslim Student Association. It's the ISNA. It's the Muslim American Society. It's all of the groups that the Bush Justice Department helped prosecute then. But of course, whether it's a Republican State Department or a Democratic State Department, you've got this attitude of dimitude that is killing Americans abroad and threatened us here at home.
But the president now is sucking up to the Muslim Brotherhood. They get invited to the White House. They get American taxpayer dollars, etc. They push Mubarak out, paving the way for the Brotherhood. This is their definition of democracy. How is it possible that the president didn't read the Pew poll, didn't read the other polls, that the people of Egypt wanted Sharia law, that they wanted a theocracy? How is it possible with all of his intelligence? We sit here on the set of Fox News Channel. We predicted with pinpoint accuracy what would happen. The president, with all his resources, got it wrong. And to this day can't admit it, and he's off campaigning in Vegas.
Well, it's willful and deliberate whitewashing of the civilizational threats that face us. And I was completely disgusted by the clip that you showed at the beginning of your show, Sean, because these optics suck, White House. I mean, we have 4 Americans who are dead, who were butchered and slaughtered because this administration did not have the foresight to fortify these embassies on the 11th anniversary of 9/11. And there he is with all of his fanboys and fangirls in Vegas raising money while they scream, "I love you," in the middle of an international crisis. And how about his statement this afternoon in the Rose Garden? He couldn't muster up a single flash of anger or outrage that these Americans are dead now. Tough day. Woe is me. The bloodlessness of his statement makes my blood boil, and it should make every American's blood boil, especially in this week, which was a tough week for all of the 3,000 families of the people who died on 9/11.
This is why everybody's blood should be boiling. Everybody. Because for 9.5 hours, the official position of the Obama administration State Department was an official apology to the people that breached our embassy and ripped down our flag. And he said, and we apologize to them? We apologize to them?
Their knee-jerk response is, it's whitewash. It always has been whitewash. What did the State Department do? What did the U.S. Embassy do after they were caught with this ridiculous statement that the White House cut and ran from? They tried to delete it. And thanks to social media, we had it at our site at twitchy.com, those deleted tweets that they tried to bury down the memory hole. And then we have this feckless lapdog media that's conspiring to make this whole issue about Romney instead of about Obama. It's on his hands. The buck stops with you, buddy.
President Obama more worried about winning the election or fighting off terrorists? Here is what Rush Limbaugh thinks.
the Obama camp, the campaign, the White House, and the media all condemned Romney before they condemned the attacks. Obama thought it more worthwhile to hit Romney for what he was doing than the terrorists for what
President
they
Obama is more worried about what Governor Romney is doing than what the terrorists are doing.
We're in the middle of an absolute disaster, a foreign policy disaster. And there's a coordinated effort to make it about Romney and whether or not he should speak, whether or not he should say anything about it, whether or not it's presidential for Romney. We're only supposed to have one president now at times like this. Well, we don't have one unless Romney speaks up. And that's the sad reality. That's the first thing that happened. That statement goes out. Apologizing in advance for private U.S. citizens exercising their free speech. Then the protests intensify into attacks on our embassy in Cairo and our consulate in Benghazi, in Libya. Romney speaks up and calls the Cairo embassy response disgraceful. We then discovered that there are murders that have taken place of Americans in Benghazi, including the ambassador. After that happens, the Obama administration disavows the Cairo embassy statement that I just read you. And after that, the Obama campaign sent one of their flacks out to shame Romney for politicizing what happened at the embassy in Libya, thereby getting the ball rolling on this whole idea that Romney ought to shut up, that Romney shouldn't be talking about this, that Romney jumped the gun, that Romney used the death of Americans as a campaign aid and violated this, you've heard this before, this sacred politics ends at the water's edge. Tell the Democrats that during the war in Iraq. Politics ends at the water's edge. Except, see, that's not what happened. Cairo puts out this statement that I just read to you. And once the media gets hold of this and starts reporting it, somebody has to speak up. It is outrageous. It's disgraceful. It's exactly what Romney said. The bottom line here is that the Obama camp, the campaign, the White House, and the media all condemned Romney before they condemned the attacks. Obama thought it more worthwhile to hit Romney for what he was doing than the terrorists for what they did. Romney got hit
Bolton
first.
Join us. Good evening, Ambassador. And boy, the people are angry tonight, not just on the streets of Cairo, but back here in the United States. Your thoughts, sir, as I know that you knew the ambassador, or at least had met him, but very disturbing news.
Well, we're at a critical period for the United States and the region, and these attacks, this tragic assassination of our ambassador in Libya and 3 of his colleagues, is in large measure caused by the weakness and fecklessness of the Obama administration's policies. Al-Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Salafists in Libya and Egypt have seen weakness, and they have acted on it. And the administration has done nothing today to correct the impression that the weakness in our policy remains. I really think the analogy to Tehran in 1979, before our embassy was taken hostage by the Ayatollahs, is right on the mark here. We're at a very, very dangerous point, and the president is not demonstrating appropriate American strength.
You know, there's so much attention, Ambassador, on what happened in Libya with the murder of our ambassador and 3 others. And there's attention, we're looking now at these live pictures of what's going on at about 4 a.m. in Cairo. There's been some protests in Tunisia, but let me tell you another thing that caught my attention. The response from Afghan President Hamid Karzai. He issued a statement today condemning the movie and calling it an insult to Islam, saying desecration is not a part of the freedom of expression, but a criminal act that has now badly affected the righteous sentiments of 1.5 billion Muslims all over the globe. Take that and contrast it with the fact how many Americans have fought and died trying to do the right thing in Afghanistan. And what's his statement? His statement is about an insult to Islam, not the fact that we had 4 of our Americans murdered in that embassy or that consulate.
No, it's outrageous, and it's the kind of thing that shows just how much Karzai fears the Taliban when, under the Obama administration policy, the American troops that are keeping Karzai in office disappear from his country. That's why this is a strategic moment for the United States from across the broader Middle East. If we don't stand up here for our interest and our values, we will see our interest and our values trashed all over the place. Let's just take Egypt and Libya for a minute. The governments of those countries failed in their fundamental responsibility to protect our diplomats and our embassy, and yet there's no word from the president on that failure. It leads to the issue whether Libya, elements of the Libyan and Egyptian governments were not complicit in these actions.
And as we're continuing to watch these pictures, I mean, it's just you can't take your eyes off them. And, of course, the very sad news today, Ambassador Stevens, he did serve as U.S. envoy to the Libyan opposition during the revolution in Libya. And only 4 months ago, he was appointed ambassador to Libya. And he recorded this State Department video.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Chris Stevens, and I'm the new U.S. ambassador to Libya. Right now, I'm in Washington, preparing for my assignment. As I walk around the monuments and memorials commemorating the courageous men and women who made America what it is, I'm reminded that we, too, went through challenging periods. When America was divided by a bitter civil war 150 years ago.
Ambassador, it just breaks your heart looking at this man who was doing so much for the Libyans and for us here at home in America. Is there something, I mean, does our foreign policy need some adjustment tonight?
Well, it needs a new president. It needs somebody who understands that American strength and leadership in the world prevent this kind of murder and attacks on our people overseas. And, you know, it's not just the official Americans who are at risk throughout the Middle East. It's the tens or hundreds of thousands of private citizens there on business, on tourism, visiting families. And they are at risk because people see that the United States has not and apparently will not stand up to these kinds of attacks. And when you add to it casting Prime Minister Netanyahu adrift, not being able to deal with Iran's quest for nuclear weapons, people see the United States in decline. Our adversaries will calculate on that and adjust their policies accordingly. The risks are rising, and we are standing idly by.
And, of course, again, I draw your attention to these pictures in Cairo where people are, protesting against us right now. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this is a Fox News alert. We are awaiting live remarks from President Obama at a campaign fundraiser in Las Vegas. Now, he is expected to talk about the ongoing situation in Libya following the killing of a U.S. ambassador and 3 Americans at the Benghazi consulate. As soon as he begins, we're going to take you there live. Also, at this hour, you're looking live outside the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, where yesterday violent protesters breached the embassy walls and replaced the American flag with a banner similar to one that is used by Al-Qaeda. Now, that breach happened only hours before the one in Benghazi, Libya. This as U.S. officials are investigating whether or not the attack on the consulate in Libya was an organized terrorist attack. A senior administration official tonight tells Fox News that the attack was too well planned to be considered spontaneous and that it may have been planned to mark the 11-year anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And joining me now live from Tripoli on the phone with the very latest from Global Radio News, Terry Friel. Terry, I understand that there is a growing group again around the embassy tonight. Is the American flag flying there?
Yes, it is at the moment, yes.
Tell us the very latest on the ground.
On the ground here in Tripoli, it's very quiet at the moment. It's 3 in the morning. The pro-US demonstrations have finished. There's not a lot of tension here, but there's a lot of confusion in the government over how to deal with the situation and the killings that happened in Benghazi just on 24 hours ago now.
All right, Terry, we really appreciate you being with us. Thank you. Now, the historical context of this national tragedy cannot be understated. Now, the last time a diplomat of this stature was assassinated abroad was 1979, when the U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan was killed in a gun battle. Now, sadly for our country, the events of yesterday felt eerily similar to the era of weakness that President Jimmy Carter once presided over. And on a day when Americans hoped to pause in remembrance of the victims of the 9/11 terror attacks, they were instead greeted with the faces of a new age of terrorists, and even worse, greeted with a president who was either unwilling or unable to confront them. But the violence on September the 11th, 2012 did not start in Libya. It all began when radical Islamists stormed the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt. A group reportedly outraged over a low-budget film that insults the Prophet Muhammad, tore down the American flag, burned it, replaced it with one symbolizing al-Qaeda. However, those actions were not met with anger by the Obama administration. Instead, a statement was released apologizing to the radicals that read, quote, "The embassy condemns the continued effort by misguided individuals to hurt the religious feelings of Muslims." We're going to check in with the president now. He is at a campaign stop in Las Vegas, and he's expected to speak on this topic.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can everybody please give Adrian a great round of applause for the wonderful introduction? I also want to say it's good to see your once and next Congresswoman, Dina Titus. And it is so good to see all of you. I love you back. I do. I wanted to begin tonight. Thank you. So, I wanted to begin tonight by just saying a few words about a tough day that we've had today. You know, we lost 4 Americans last night who were killed when they were attacked at a diplomatic post in Libya. And they were serving overseas on our behalf. Despite the dangers, despite the risks, to help one of the world's youngest democracies get on its feet. They were working to advance the interests and the values that we hold dear as Americans. And as Americans, we stand united, all of us, in gratitude for their service, and we are mindful of their sacrifice. And we want to send out heartfelt prayers to their loved ones who grieve today. It's a reminder that the freedoms we enjoy, sometimes in the freedoms we take for granted, they're only sustained because there are people like those who were killed, who are willing to stand up for those freedoms, who are willing to fight for those freedoms, in some cases to lay down their lives for those freedoms. So tonight, let's think of them and thank them. As for the ones we lost last night, I want to assure you we will bring their killers to justice. And we want to send a message all around the world. Anybody who would do us harm, no act of terror will dim the light of the values that we proudly shine on the rest of the world, and no act of violence will shake the resolve of the United States of America. We will not be deterred. We will keep going. We will keep going because the world needs us. We are the one indispensable power in the world. And if we are going to see peace and security for our children and our grandchildren, then that means that this generation of Americans has to lead. We're going to have to keep doing the work, no matter how hard it seems sometimes. And that's what I want to talk to you about here today. We've got work to do overseas. We've also got to do some work here at home. And we've got to do some work right here in the great state of Nevada. Now, because Nevada is a battleground state, you are aware that we've got an election going on.
Now, they said that these comments would come early in the speech, so I assume that's all he's going to say on the situation. He said it was a tough day today, and yet only 24 hours after this happened did he finally say we will bring those people to justice. At no time did the president mention or discuss the issue of Islamic terrorists. Perhaps he will refer to this as workplace violence like he did in the Fort Hood case. Now, to pick up where we left before the president spoke, the protests in Cairo started when a group reportedly outraged over a low-budget film that insults the Prophet Muhammad tore down the American flag. They burned it. They replaced it with one symbolizing al-Qaeda. However, those actions were not met with anger by the administration. Instead, for the last 24 hours and 9.5 hours straight, the statement and the official position of our government was apologizing to the radicals. And it read, quote, from the embassy, they condemn the continuing efforts by misguided individuals to hurt the religious feelings of Muslims. Now, feelings being hurt should have been the least of this White House concern. And while the president and Hillary Clinton want to claim they didn't authorize that statement, it happened directly under their watch, and they should be ashamed. Now, Governor Romney, on the other hand, he addressed this pathetic response earlier today. He was in Jacksonville, Florida.
I also believe the administration was wrong to stand by a statement sympathizing with those who had breached our embassy in Egypt, instead of condemning their actions. It's never too early for the United States government to condemn attacks on Americans and to defend our values. The White House distanced itself last night from the statement, saying it wasn't cleared by Washington, and that reflects the mixed signals they're sending to the world.